And welcome once again to another video of our Viking Grand European River Cruise, days 14 and 15 in Budapest. Sadly, we reached the last leg of our journey where we sail from Vienna to Budapest, and that was an overnight sail. Once we arrived in Budapest, we were treated with some great views of the famous Parliament building and of the river itself. Buda is the hilly portion on the left, and on the right is the flat part of Pest. At the top of Castle Hill is the Imperial Palace on the hilly side of Buda, and you can see how hilly it really is. The chain bridge connects Buda and Pest, and you can see the great big parking lot of Viking boats there. There are a number of tours that are offered here in Budapest, including the Best of Budapest, which includes a chocolatier and a distillery, or you can hike up to the top of Castle Hill, which is a substantial hike. You can take a visit to the famous Hungarian horseman and travel to horse country to tour a farm. You can take the short walk over to the Grand Market where you get a taste of Hungary, or finally, you can do Panoramic Budapest, which is the included tour, and that's the one we'll discuss in this video. This Panoramic Budapest starts with a coach tour of Pest, the flatter part of the city, and consists of two major parts, and I'll go through each one. The first starts right near the docks themselves, and then proceeds through city streets. Very close to the ship on the right-hand side is the Market Hall, which is covered in another tour, but I will show that in another video since it is just a short walk over to there from the ship, and you get lots of food in there. Next is Calvin Square, which is a central square and a major transit hub, and it has lots of restaurants, coffee shops, and a university right in the square, not to mention the Calvin Reformed Church. Not far from the square is the National Museum of Hungary, which is certainly worth a visit if you have time on your own. We continue on Museum Street and then turn on Caroly Street. This is a very cosmopolitan street, and as we proceed down a little bit further, we look to the right and we see the Doheny Street Synagogue, which is absolutely gorgeous, and we will pay a visit to that in another video. As we make a slight left turn, we see a beautiful center divider with carefully trimmed boxwood trees on either side of the transit tracks, and you will find the transit system here in Budapest is really, really excellent. There are some very ornate buildings that line Elizabeth Square, and this is a park square with an ornamental fountain, cafes, and city views from the Budapest Eye Ferris wheel. As we prepare to make the turn from Elizabeth Square, we see some very modern architecture, and that's in contrast to St. Stephan's Basilica, which we see further down the street. We turn right and head up Andrássy Street, which is a beautiful tree-lined street, and we can see the Ferris wheel in the background. This street has some very high-end shops, so bring your wallet when you come. You can find the likes of shops like Breitling, Michael Kors, and Mont Blanc. A little bit further up the street is the Budapest Opera House, and we stayed near here post-cruise, and I will talk about that a little bit more in detail in another video. Next, we come to Octagon Square, and yes, there are 8 sides to the square, and it is ringed by some very high-end buildings. Many of these buildings have great big advertising posters on them. Next up is the subtly named House of Terror, which is a museum that documents the effect of the Nazi and Soviet regimes in Hungary and has a memorial to its victims. A little bit further up is Kodály Square, which has some gorgeous buildings. There's a statue there of Georgi Sondi, who was renowned for his defense of Budapest against the Ottomans. Also in the square, there's a museum dedicated to Zoltán Kodály, a famous Hungarian composer. We now reach the end of Andrássy Avenue, and that's at Heroes Square, which is a great big public square and is the focal point of the city. The centerpiece is the Millennium Monument, which is a structure that has the statues of the 7 Magyar chiefs who led the Hungarian conquest in the 9th century. Also around this central column are statues of other prominent Hungarian figures that create a powerful panorama of the nation's history. On either side of the square are the museums of fine art, and also across is the Museum of Contemporary Art. We didn't have time to go into those. This completes the first half of the bus trip, and now it's time to turn and go back towards the Danube. We didn't find that this part of the ride was as interesting as the first part, but it starts out with a drive by the Ethnographic Museum of Budapest. This is a brand new building, having just been finished in 2022, and it is designed to blend into the surrounding city park with the grass on the roof and this very innovative wave-like form. Continuing past the museum, we saw some very interesting buildings that were in a bad state of repair, and I don't know exactly why that was. There was some discussion about there were bullet holes left over from the 1956 revolution, but there's also some discussion about it just being in a sad state of repair. Next, we go by the main train station, which is an absolutely gorgeous building, both inside and out, as we went there to continue our trip to the Czech Republic. We turn at the train station and then head down the road to the Elizabeth Bridge. There's some nice architecture along the way, but it isn't anything that I would call spectacular until we arrive at the Elizabeth Bridge, and it's framed by this gateway. As we cross the Elizabeth Bridge, we get a glimpse of the statue on top of the citadel, which was built in 1848 after the suppression of the Hungarian Revolution, and this fort is really the symbol of the city. As we turn and look towards the end of the bridge, we see the imposing statue of St. Gerard Sagredo, who was an 11th century monk. So now we turn and head up the Danube for what I consider the highlight of this leg, and that's a drive by Buda Castle, and then on up the hill to Fisherman's Bastion. Below Buda Castle is the Castle Gardens Bazaar, which consists of shops, restaurants, museums, and even a theater. Here you get a good aerial view of the gardens, and then we look up to the main castle complex itself, with the Fisherman's Bastion and St. Matthias Church in the background. Buda Castle lies above the gardens, and it was originally a 13th century fortress. A lot of it was destroyed during World War II and has been since rebuilt, but the main structure houses the Royal Palace, which has the Hungarian National Gallery, the Budapest History Museum, and the National Library. We are going through a tunnel here to go over to another part of the castle grounds, and that's Fisherman's Bastion and the Matthias Church. This was the only place we actually got out of the buses to walk around. We parked on the side of the hill a little distance from Matthias Church and the Bastion, and we had a fairly decent walk up the hill, but it wasn't too bad overall. Our bus was way down at the end of the street, around the corner, and then we hiked up past the cafes with lots of other Viking tourists. Just before you reach the church, we see the plague column, which was dedicated to the victims of the plague in 1690. Of course, there are a number of Viking tour groups standing here and looking up at the church tower. This Gothic tower is called the Matthias Tower and was finished in 1470. Next to the church, you find the statue of King Stefan I. He was the first Christian king of Hungary, and he reigned from 10,000 till 1038. So let's take a quick look inside the church, and the very first thing we see is the coat of arms of King Matthias. It used to be on the bell tower. Now, the Viking tour guides are very good here. We sat in pews, and the Viking tour guides gave us all the information we needed about the church. It is highly decorated. The colors seem to match that of the roof. The altar, of course, is dedicated to the Virgin Mary, And there's a side organ here on the side of the church, but supposedly the largest organ in Hungary is at the back of the church, but we really couldn't see it. You do get a look, however, at how exquisitely detailed the paintings are. There are also flags in there from the 1867 coronation of the king. Next to the main altar is the St. Ladislaus Chapel, and he was a knight king, and supposedly miraculous events occurred, and those are painted on the walls here. This doorway are the stairs to the Maltese Knights Chapel, which is in the organ loft just above the door. This tomb dates back to 1898 and contains the remains of King Bela III and his wife Anne. Note the animals placed at their feet. One appears to be a lion, I think, and the other is a dog. This is the St. Emeric Chapel, and it was built in the 19th century, and the St. Emeric is in the center between St. Stephan and St. Gerard. The murals depict the life of St. Francis of Assisi. Well, that's it for the inside of the church. Let's take a walk outside and get some spectacular views of the Danube River. Well, let's get a little aerial view from Fisherman's Bastion. Needless to say, the views are absolutely spectacular, especially of the Hungarian Parliament across the river. Fisherman's Bastion is named after the fishermen who lived in this area, and it was built around 1900. The bastion is made of white limestone and has 7 towers, each representing one of the 7 Magyar tribes who conquered Hungary in the 9th century. The towers connected by arcades and walkways, and there's just tremendous views from up here. It is a great place to take photos, especially at sunset, but be advised there is an admission charge to get onto the towers. The roof of the Matthias Church is one of the most distinctive and striking features. It's covered with glazed ceramic tiles produced in Hungary in the city of Pécs. These tiles are known for their durability and unique iridescent finish that gives the roof its jewel-like appearance. The roof tiles are arranged in intricate geometric patterns, which adds to the architectural interest of the church. The tiles are designed to catch light in different ways, which gives an ever-changing appearance depending on the time of day and even weather conditions. During our stay in Budapest, I was able to come back at night and give you a look at the St. Matthias Church from below with this absolutely gorgeous view. Well, that does it for Panoramic Budapest. We left the Fisherman's Bastion, got back on the buses, and went back to the ship for some dinner. We do hope you enjoyed this video and will subscribe for more.